Talia, good morning.
Hi, good morning.
I'm used to saying good morning, Peter, but Peter is out on assignment this week. So I'm very fortunate to have Talia Tamarchio joining as our guest host today. Talia, why don't you take a minute and introduce yourself, and then we'll welcome everyone to Call Me Data.
Cool. Hi, guys. Nice to meet you. I'm Talia. I'm based out of Philadelphia, and I currently work at Accenture as a generative AI consultant, and I'm also the director of Philly AI Connect. So I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah, great to have you. And you were a guest on the podcast once last fall, I think it was. So
Yes.
I guess this is welcome back. Yeah, so our topic today has an interesting and probably expectation setting headline. It's the AI roadmap that every enterprise needs but few have. And I think when I look at that, to me, it's really about what are some of the stumbling blocks in creating an AI roadmap and a strategy that organizations run into. I saw a terrifying stat the other day that I really hope wasn't true, but it was from a research organization. They indicated that depending on how you count success or failure, up to 85% of AI efforts in the last 12 months were judged to have been failures. That's horrific. Like, that scares people when you read that headline. And I really hope the number isn't that high. But on the other hand, you probably see a lot of the same things I see, where a lot of AI efforts are probably not set up for success.
Oh, that's a tough one.
Yeah, I don't know.
Um,
So let's just jump in and talk about like
let's
why
go with the
what's
first one.
happening. Sure.
So first, I feel like, yes, when you hear that stat, you're like, oh my God, what?
Right.
Like super scary, right? But I don't find failures scary because that's how you learn, right? Um, I feel like in the beginning of when generative AI came out a few years ago, everyone was just experimenting, right? No one
Right.
really was set up for success. It was kind of like the unknown. What do we do? How do we do this? And like when people started out with RAG, but then you're like, okay, we did all this experimenting. Now what? So that's how you like learn and grow. So I don't feel like the first iteration as a whole to be a failure is a bad thing. I think that's learning lessons and almost like a redirection of where we should go as an industry.
Right.
Do you feel
I
the
mean, it's sort of,
same?
yeah, I totally do. It's sort of like the only mistake that really is failure is the one you don't learn anything from,
Oh
right?
yeah.
But it is funny because I do think I see. So maybe we can subdivide those failures, whatever the percentage is, into the ones where the smart failures where people don't reach all their end goals, but they learn something and they're equipped to do better,
Yeah.
versus the ones where people are just maybe undirected and playing and don't harvest the knowledge from the failure. Those are the ones you want to avoid, I guess.
Yeah. And it could be just a simple, oh, this tech didn't work. Let's try this again. Or it could be anything, but the redirection is probably the most important, right?
Right. Well, I mean, that's a really good point. It could be the technology didn't work, or it could be that the technology sort of worked, but you didn't have the impact you were hoping to have.
Yeah.
I mean, there's lots of different failure modes, and not all of them are really bad. To your point.
Actually, something food for thought now that
Yeah.
we're starting this. Um, I don't think in the past couple years anyone had anything to measure against, right? So the failure
Yeah.
wasn't, how do you know if it was failure, right? So when generative AI came out, what did we have to measure against? It wasn't anything out there. So the real big learning lesson is, hey, when you're building something new now with these new lessons that you've learned from your failures, what is the intention of what you're building?
Yeah. And that's a great point, because not only do you need to know the intention, but you probably need to know some reasonably close or approximate quantification of that. Like, one of the things I was
Yeah.
talking about with someone the other day is it's hard to compete with magic. So if people expect an AI implementation to just be this magical transformation that suddenly happens and everything is different after they roll out this capability. We know that's not the case, but if you don't have some quantified definition of what success looks like, then you're competing against this fictitious magical transformation. And that's really hard to compete against.
For sure. Not having your metrics to go up against in the beginning,
Right.
then you're just kind of building. And
Yeah.
how do you know if you're building what you need? And obviously it might
Right.
change over time, but another piece that no one's really thought about is great, you built this great product, then what?
Right.
AI is such a behavioral shift in this current state of our world. You need change management or you need AI adoption or something to move
Right.
forward because otherwise you just build a great product and nobody uses it.
That's a really good point. And so some of that failure might not be a failure of the technology or the product that you're
Yeah.
building. It could just be tissue rejection in your organization or other things.
And
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great topic to talk about too. People are so scared
So
of
let's talk
losing
about
their
that because it is
job.
something. Yeah. What how do you respond when someone says, "Is AI going to replace all our jobs someday?" Um, what's your actual response to that? After you have that nod
Um,
of disbelief, you're like, "Oh God, I can't believe someone's asking me this again." Um,
so obviously I'm a little bit biased because I work in AI, right? But I love that I work in AI because I can tell people that it's not scary, right? It's going to be a tool that everyone needs to use. And um, Microsoft just came out with a index report yesterday. I don't know if you saw it, but
I
it
didn't.
came back of like the agentic boss like race, which is kind of funny. There is going to be a lot new roles coming out, right? And it's going to be how are you using AI? You're either going to kind of get with it and use the AI for your job, or you're going to be a little bit left behind. So I think it's more or less like it's not scary. It's not going to take your job. You just need to know how to use it in your day to day because at some point
Right.
in the next 3 to 5 years, it's going to be integrated in everyone's workflow.
So you would say it's not going to take your job, but it will require you to adapt and learn to
Yes,
interact and use it.
1000%. How do you feel about it?
I do. I think that's exactly right. It's, on my more pessimistic days, sometimes I think that, if you look at the macro level, right, I firmly believe it's not going to lead to significant job loss. It's going to lead to reshaping jobs. The problem is if you look at the individual level, as with any transformation, there are going to be people who just can't make the leap to the new form of their jobs. There's going to be some individual level displacement because some people will not be able to learn to work with AI or they will be overcome by the fear and they won't want to or whatever. So I think it's maybe a mixed message that individuals may be impacted, but as a mechanism of large scale job loss, I don't think that's going to happen at all. And I generally think for most people, I hope for most people, it's exactly what the picture you painted, which is they learn to leverage AI.
Yeah.
The shape of their job changes, but they have a job, and it's just using different tools than it was a few years ago.
And I truly feel like it will free up a lot of that like automated mundane tasks. That's going to free up your time to do more creative work, more strategic work. Um, I want to maybe come back to you with a question of
Sure.
what roles and what industries do you think that will be affected the most with this
Oh boy.
new job shift?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because we hear a lot about Gen AI as like the great white collar job displacement engine, and there's maybe a little bit of poetic justice in that because if you look at the industrial revolution and other the digital revolution before, that probably disproportionately impacted less skilled jobs, right? And now you're hearing all these horror stories about doctors and architects and lawyers and software engineers,
Yeah.
etc., all being replaced by AI. So I do think there is some truth to that. I think this will have a bigger impact on knowledge workers than a lot of other
Yeah.
changes have. But I think we would be short sighted to think it's only going to impact the knowledge workers, because if you go back to like the concept of agents, which Peter and I talked about last week, I think that was, right, like agentic solutions are going to mean that you can automate regular workflows, and so that's going to impact people who aren't necessarily in those knowledge worker positions, because more and more tasks will be able to be automated than ever before. So I think it's not going to only hit knowledge workers. I think it's going to be a broad impact versus more narrow impacts of
Yeah.
things like industrialization, electrification, and things like that.
What about specific industries?
That's a really that's a hard one. I feel like I'm going to get myself in trouble if I single out an industry.
Well,
But
we'll skip it. It's okay. I was
no,
just kind of
no,
curious.
let's not avoid it. I mean, because I think it's a good thought exercise. Like, I think I'm probably going to be absolutely wrong in all of this, but like as I think about my exposure to industries, I certainly see there's a lot of opportunities in the usual suspects, if you will. Like financial services is looking for ways to embrace it. Healthcare is looking for ways to embrace generative AI, but logistics, distribution, manufacturing. So it's kind of hard to think of someone who's not. But I do think that what I have seen is the less regulated industries are moving more quickly at exploring kind of more novel uses of Gen AI. Regulated industries, I saw a stat the other day that the number one use case in financial services for Gen AI right now is software development as a coding copilot.
Interesting. Not
No.
analytics. That's interesting.
And the last thing on their list is anything that has direct customer impact or is visible to the customer. So I think software development is sort of viewed as it's an internal function. It's safe. You're not going to, obviously, you still have to rigorously test software, etc. But you're not going to risk an embarrassing interaction with a customer if you're just using it to develop software. Hopefully,
Yeah.
so. I don't know.
There's
What do
this
you?
new
What's your
notion.
experience?
So, I mean, so my experience a little bit different, but I see it impacting so many different industries. Like
Yeah.
I look at it from like a workflow point of view instead. And maybe I should take a zoomed out version and see like industries as a whole, but let's just take software development as an example. This
Right.
new notion of like vibe coding.
Yes. Yes.
I love it because more and more people who were scared of like coding or being a software developer or learning a new language were super intimidated, right? Now
Right.
they're going online and vibe coding and it's like fun for them. So I love that because it's bridging the gap between the knowledge, but it's also bridging the gap of trying something new, even if they're not
Yeah.
building something. But then it also is like the software developers are like, well, is my job going to go away? Which it's not.
No.
It's so that's one example. Um, I look at AI as a tool, to be
Yeah.
completely honest.
And I'm fascinated by the point you just raised about sort of the fear, and that maybe vibe coding is one of the ways for people to sort of get over the fear of like jumping into new technology and new skills. I think as adults, I'm going to reminisce for a second. When I was in seventh grade, I think it was, I was hired to teach an adult education course on computer skills. And this was long before most people had ever touched a computer. So, I mean, this was completely new territory. And I was also helping to teach my peers during the day. And my peers were just, we're seventh graders, right? We're just jumping on these terminals and trying stuff and
Yeah.
learning to write basic programs. When the adults came in the evening, they were terrified of breaking something, of doing something wrong, of causing some
Yep.
harm. So that like playfulness and willingness to just learn and experiment, I think it gets kind of beaten out of us. And I don't know if you feel this way, but like I have found when using generative AI, you just have to get back into that mode of experiment, play, learn.
Yep.
So maybe that's one of the skills we need to instill in people.
Is playfulness and experimenting,
Yeah. So
which is
we
not
we have a
typical.
so maybe this is a
Go
good
ahead.
segue to one of the questions that we had from the
Mhm.
chat. And the question is, I saw the White House is focusing on advancing AI education for K through 12 students. What are gut reactions to that? Now, I have to fully confess, I haven't read the press release or the announcement from the White House,
Me
so
neither.
this will be a little bit of us like pretending we know what that's about. But like, how does that strike you? The idea of like a concerted effort to make sure that we teach AI, especially in undergrad K through 12 students.
Okay, so as a woman who got her degree in computer science, I realized that I don't know, my upbringing and my exposure at a young age definitely influenced what I wanted to do with my life, right? And
Okay.
I think K through 12 is a great place to start because by the time that someone's in college, yes, you change your major a lot, but the early exposure is what changes people's mindset, right? And that is
Yeah.
when they're playful and they're experimenting when they're younger, right? Um, if we're moving into this new generation and this new way of working and this new world of AI, okay, let me give you an example.
Sure.
I don't know when the year exactly that computers came out, but think about when computers first came out and now. It was a huge shift. So I would love to compare the idea of this whole shift in society of pre times of computers and now to AI and the future. So you teach computers in school, you would have to change that whole curriculum to teach AI because it's going to be the norm in 5 years. So I love the idea of all of that.
Right.
Does
That's really
that hit
interesting.
ring a bell?
Yeah. I think that's right. I mean, that resonates with me because if I think back to, so I was actually there when computers started making their appearance. I think I entered college with a typewriter and I left with walking to the computer lab at night to use a terminal, but at least we were doing our research papers and term papers in software instead of just a manual typewriter. But I think AI. Back to your point also about the like the difference in the jobs that were going to be impacted by AI and how that would work. Like I think this sort of becomes a basic foundational skill that everyone needs to have regardless of and some subset of people that learn
Exactly.
about AI are going to be inspired to go off and pursue degrees in computer science or even become AI researchers. And I think, look, that's the from a political angle, the value is we need to be developing AI researchers in the United States. Our academic institutions maybe aren't cranking out as many graduate level researchers as they should, so I know there's an angle there, but setting all that aside, I think every citizen, when you get a job, you're going to have to use AI. It's just like if
Yep.
I had
It's
told
just
someone
like
when I was
using a
in,
computer.
yeah. So another flashback story. You get to learn all about David's upbringing today. I also in high school took a typing class, and I remember no one could get their head around why would you take a typing class? The typing class was
Hmm.
like it wasn't even in the academic curriculum, it was in one of the vocational curriculums. But I, because of my nerdy hobbies, was spending a lot of time working on keyboards, and there was just like this part of me that said
Hmm.
I need to learn to type because I'll be able to do computer stuff faster. Fast forward a few years, and everybody types now. Yeah, it might be hunting and pecking, or it might be formal typing,
Yep.
but everyone is proficient with using their keyboard. Um, so I think the norms change, and I think it's overdue maybe for AI to become sort of one of the basic skills that we teach people.
Yep. And to segue that into later terms of education, Penn announced, I think in February, the first Ivy League undergraduate degree in AI, which is such a
Oh,
huge
interesting.
shift, right? So
Yeah.
if we're going to be getting undergrad bachelor's degrees in just artificial intelligence, of course we're going to have to go backwards to K through 12.
Right. Right. You're not gonna learn everything in a few years in at university if you don't have the foundations.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so. I think that's hopeful. So, so we hit upon sort of the organizational and the workforce angle of this, and educating the workforce about AI and helping people be ready to make whatever sort of transitions or changes in their role might be brought in by the introduction of AI. Um, let's shift to like another view and maybe go up a level, because I think you sort of hit on this earlier when we were talking about, people experimenting and the difference between experimenting to learn versus experimenting just because it's fun. Um, it has your Are you starting to see that organizations are more and more really developing an AI roadmap and giving some structure and some direction to the learnings and the experimentations? Or do you think most companies are still in that more free form, unstructured learning phase?
The honest answer is I think it's in between.
Yeah,
We're not there yet. There has been like commonalities that we've seen in industry of, hey, you're building a chatbot. Hey, you're building a knowledge management, internal chatbot or system, or you're building a content. Everyone's building a content generator, whether that's
right.
video, those are like the common themes that we've seen. And
Yeah,
working as a consultant, you can see the different companies that are building it. We're all talking to each other like, hey, has anybody built anything new? And it's pretty much the same
right.
common
Yeah,
themes, right? So the AI, the roadmap, I think, is not there yet. I think people are starting to think about, how can AI help my job, or what's this pain point that I have? Or I think if you would have asked me that a year ago, I don't think people who are working in industry were thinking about, how can AI fix my problem? How can AI help
right.
my job? Now they're thinking about it, and the best course of action really is to communicate that and talk to, your like leadership needs to
Yep.
kind of come down and say, well, how do we solve this mass amount of problem for all of our employees, right? So the roadmap, I don't think personally is there
Yeah.
for overall.
I'm afraid I agree with you. I'm a big advocate for the concept that your AI strategy is your business strategy. In other words, that means that like there's really no part of your business that could not be impacted by AI. And yet, if you have an AI strategy that says you're going to focus over here, but you have a business strategy that says these are my key objectives,
Absolutely.
you're not helping yourself. And let's face it, AI is expensive. Um, it's the people that know how to work with it can be expensive. The compute resources are expensive. The opportunity cost is massively expensive if you spend your time learning the wrong lessons on the wrong types of projects. So I'm a huge proponent that you need to have an AI roadmap, an AI strategy, and that needs to be very tightly anchored to your business objectives. I mean, you said it that like
Absolutely.
if you don't know where the business problems are, you're just gonna like cherry pick what you want to work on with AI, and that's not going to get you the results you need.
Business problems and business opportunities, right? So it's
Yes.
not just solving a problem. It could be, oh, well, I can generate more leads here, or I can, better customer service here, or something like that. But you kind of hit the nail on the head of, it needs to be directly intertwined with the business.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that whole strategic alignment between your AI agenda and your overall business agenda is probably something that's missing for a lot of organizations. And, to be fair, I think some of them, and I'd love to know if you have the same experience. I think a lot of organizations struggle because they haven't yet been able to figure out how AI can accentuate their business objectives, right? That it's
Absolutely.
not always clear which of these opportunities can I actually use AI for.
That, and again, it's expensive. Uh,
Yeah,
I think it keeps going back to my same theme of, we don't have any metrics to go against. So
right.
if you don't know how AI is going to save you money, make you more money, make your you know, employees more productive. How do you quantify productivity in AI? So
Right.
why would leaders and business owners invest millions of dollars into building this solution if they don't even know the guaranteed output of saving that, or what's their return? Because
Yeah.
they haven't really, no one's, I haven't, for me, I haven't seen a report out yet of something of like, this is, go
Yeah.
ahead.
No, I'm agreeing with you. It's just you're triggering a lot of traumatic memories about
I'm
projects that
sorry.
have no projects that have so poorly defined ROI, and and
Wait,
it's
can
not
I
even
just
just a
say,
matter. Yeah,
we are going into your childhood. We're triggering you. I think this is a therapy session.
I might need to take the rest of the day off after this. Um, yeah, who knew this was going to be so intensely painful? No, just kidding. Um, Drudging up all my past memories. No, I think AI probably is more apt than the average project to have poorly defined ROI because people don't know exactly what they're trying to achieve. And yet the weird thing about it that I was just thinking of as you were saying that was it's also not something where the ROI develops over time. In some cases, the ROI, if you measure it on day one after production go live, is very low. But there's this process of learning to adapt the people and adapting your business process to that tool because no business process ever survives a skirmish with AI without being changed in some way, right? Like you don't just
Yep,
plug AI into a business process and nothing changes. So I think it requires sort of an ongoing effort to monitor and watch the business value and make some adjustments along the way.
yep.
It's very different than
That's a
like
good
we
point.
build an application system. It's like, all right, we're going to turn it on, we're going to measure the productivity levels, job done, we move on to the next project.
Yeah.
So,
And there's all of those systems already in place, right? The
yeah,
adoption piece, the learning piece, the this is, I guess we could just say AI is specifically generative AI, agentic AI is the unknown for enterprise
yeah,
at least, and for businesses.
yeah. And it's some weird combination of unknown and overhyped to where they people don't understand where the hard work is in it, right?
Oh,
So I was having a conversation with someone the other night who we were talking about the fact that this person had used in their personal life had used AI chatbots so much, or just using like the GPT client or something, and it was so easy because you have a very simple text interface with some voice options. You can upload documents, right? And it all seems easy. And it sort of creates this perception that like when you're implementing AI in a industrial strength setting as a client facing chatbot for customer service, for example, right? It's not that easy because you now have a lot of engineering challenges that you have to address. You have a lot of safety and policy adherence
yep,
questions you have to address, etc. So it's the fact that no other piece of technology that we've had has ever been this easy to access. Like, everyone says the genius of OpenAI was not the model, it was the user interface that they made the model accessible. All I need is to know how to use a browser and I can start chatting with AI. So I
yep.
think there's this gulf between like sometimes people perceive it as, wow, it's nearly magic and it's really easy to do. What do you mean there's a project required to stand up this capability?
Because they see it. They're like, wow, this is so easy.
Yeah.
This looks so, but really there's so much on the back end to set up. Um,
Yeah.
as you were talking, I was starting to think the user interface. I and this is just my my like little theory here is I feel like generative AI and chat GPT or whatever you use,
Yep.
Copilot is going to replace Google 1,000%.
Yeah.
It's not just building stuff and generating stuff. The knowledge management piece of chat, what should I respond to this email? Like
Right.
that, or hey, what year did typewriters come out? That piece of spending all that time to go out and Google something and search something and try to find the correct answer,
Right.
that is the biggest replacement of behavior. And that was easy. That was, look at the
Right.
difference between the behavior shift of that and then the behavior shift of actual other huge implementations. Like, if we could change that behavior shift just like that with all the other things, we would be
Right.
fast,
Right.
right?
It'd be amazing. No, you're right. It's that's a great example too, because I think that one is easy for people to get their heads around. Because if you stop and think,
Mm,
we're also used to Google or whatever search engine you want to use,
yeah.
but usually they return a page, right? They return a page and maybe some, these days maybe a little bit of summarized content from the page or something. But what you're actually looking for is an answer. And so this is a case where you're clearly taking an intermediary step out of the process and you're making, question to
Hmm.
answer more immediate. Um,
It's more convenient. So I wonder if
yeah.
there's a way for, I know this topic that we're talking about is enterprise, right? I wonder if there's a way for enterprise solutions to be more convenient like that in order to drive more AI adoption and acceptance. It's a
So
loaded
it's
question. I'm sorry.
no, but it's a great thought because I think if we take at face value the idea of AI as a tool, it is a tool,
Yeah.
right? But what we really want to do, and I'm sort of taking liberties with your idea and riffing on it here a little bit, but what we really want to do is we want to build applications that use the tool so that you go from, you know, the user to the answer they're looking for very quickly, right? Search powered by AI is sort of an application of AI where they're actually giving you an answer. Yes, there's
Yep.
GenAI in the background. So like it's interesting because what you see is companies rolling out the tool. They're rolling out Copilot 365 or ChatGPT or whatever
Hmm.
model they want to roll out as this all-purpose, digital assistant for employees. There's probably still more. That's probably old-fashioned thinking, right? Like there's probably still more you could do to actually create a set of actual applications of that tool to do specific things because you still have to do a lot of work to use those tools. I don't know. It's interesting to think about how could we shorten the gap like between intention and result.
We gotta make another solution with all in on data. We'll have to take this
Yeah.
offline, guys.
Yes. I feel a new product coming on. Uh,
But the
so
idea of the convenience piece is probably the most desired, right, for the end for the user, and whether that's an employee or a customer or whatever,
right.
the convenience is what changes the behavioral shift because it makes people uh, save time and focus on other stuff.
Right. Right. And look, the optimist to me, I confessed a few minutes ago to having a cynical side looking at some of the success rates of projects. The
Hmm.
optimist in me loves to think that, you know, people's quality of life at work will get better because they can spend their time on more meaningful tasks and or they can just have more flexibility about when and where and how the work gets done.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think that's nothing to overlook, right? Could be huge.
But I'll be the cynical one here. Do you think that in turn, leaders and CEOs and companies are going to expect people to work more? You know how
How much more could they expect us to work?
but if you're freeing up
Yeah,
and automating a lot of your work, is there going to be an expectation
yeah,
to replace some of that time? And is that the reason why there's so much
yeah,
AI adoption pushback?
yeah. So I think the short-sighted view would be, yeah, I should get more out of these workers because I'm going to give them these tools, and if they can automate certain things, I should just be able to get 20% more throughput out of them. Um, I think that's just as short-sighted as an arbitrary
Hmm.
return to office policy, right? Like what it doesn't recognize is the shifting norms in the way that people want to work and the way that they want to blend their
Yeah.
work life and their personal life. So I personally think that the more forward-looking management view would be I can make this person's job more interesting. I can let them use their brain on the things I'm paying them for, not I can squeeze an extra 10 hours a week of productivity out of them. Um,
Yeah. And I think it goes on both ways of a creative employee and like a logistical employee. You're
yeah,
freeing up more time for the logistic person, um, like a developer. And then a creative, you're giving them more time to be more creative. So I
yeah.
think it's on both sides.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I'm reminded of an example a few years ago. I was working on a project and we were um, trying to do policy as code automation. So we were writing code in the way that cloud apps were deployed that would check and enforce some security policies and technical configuration policies. And the idea was instead of making a human go and check, we're just going to like validate the code and block it from being promoted if it didn't meet certain criteria. One of the people who was in a control function whose job it was to look at code and run through a checklist and say yes or no basically said, well, but what is my team going to do now? And it was an interesting question. I can see where that question comes from. And our response was, well, do you actually like scanning through source code and configuration files and running through your checklist? Or do you like the idea that you can prevent problems so you can help people find better ways to do things? And he said, well, it's the latter, obviously. I said, great. Like now, if you don't have to do the first part and you can spend more time on
Yeah.
coming up with better and more nuanced policies and better and more nuanced ways to enforce those policies. You can spend your time on helping us automate those policies. You can spend your time on edge cases. And the ones where you do have to make manual judgment calls will be the really interesting ones. They'll be the ones that you hadn't thought of before. And they were
Yeah.
outside the boundaries of the policies. Like that to me, for a lot of people at least, is a much more interesting way to spend your workday than flipping through forms and running through
Yeah.
a checklist all day. So
Yeah. And you have happier employees.
yeah. So, look, maybe you can call me Pollyanna for this, but I do think that there are a lot of jobs that if management has the right expectations and the right framework for this, that nature of that job could be improved, enhanced, and made, frankly,
Yeah.
more enjoyable for people. Um, yeah, I hope so. Uh,
I love that you compared it to the work from home, like bringing everyone back. Like AI adoption in this. I work from home. You guys, I'm literally at home right now. Um,
yeah,
but I love it. If I during my lunch break I'm gonna go do my laundry, great. Like I love that. That has made me a happier employee for sure. A
yeah.
more lonelier one because I wish I did meet more go talk to more people. But it's true, right? But if I ever want to go in the office, my office is not far. But I think that that freedom and that flexibility has definitely made happier employees. And that's what AI will do with someone's job is make
Yeah.
them more flexible.
There's a fantastic little coffee shop across the street from me here in New York, and I was talking to the owner once, and we were joking that he knows all the work from home employees because they're the ones who like make a lot of small talk with the baristas. The people who actually have office jobs, they're
Oh
in,
my
they order the coffee,
God.
they grab it, and they leave. But the people who are working from home crave a little bit of face-to-face interaction.
Oh my gosh. Wow. That's so funny. Now I mean I
Yeah.
know my barista. I go to this one coffee shop. I know they're all names. I'm that person.
Yes, yes. I know. When he said that, I was like, I feel seen. You get me. So, um, well, hey, it has flown by. It's we've already come
hmm
up on our on near the end of our allotted time. Let's recap a couple of the things we talked about. I think we
Sure.
we started out talking about sort of. I loved your point that you started with around how a failed AI project isn't necessarily a failure if you learn the right things from it, and we segued from there into the importance of like knowing why you're doing a project and trying to get your AI agenda aligned with your business strategy and how critical that is. Um, and I think we talked about sort of the people and the organizational side of things, didn't we? Um, and what else did we cover? It's been a
I know.
blur. I think
We did a lot of childhood trauma and we did no.
we did.
We definitely did a lot of comparisons. I think that
Yeah,
that to me was super cool to learn hey, how do you like these two behavioral shifts? And I'm hoping that all of you listeners can see the comparisons and see how something in your everyday life can be changed or made, even better.
Right. Yeah, I think that's look. It's been a great conversation, and I don't know if you have any closing thoughts. I'll offer one thing, which is it just occurred to me as you were saying that, like, it is change. We're always trying to find analogies and comparisons to help us, like, frame up what we're seeing in the world of AI. And
Yeah.
those are very, very useful. I will also say this, um, and I say this as someone who spends probably more time than the average person getting hands-on with AI models and working with it and doing things. I think it's also okay to let yourself be kind of confused and afraid sometimes, because it is dazzlingly complex. It's changing so fast. And there are days when I'm just like, oh my God, another change. Like, how am I going to figure this out? Like, how
Yeah.
am I going to ever decipher what this means? And I think it's okay. Like, you don't have to feel like, okay, I'm on top of this. I have to be on top of this every day. Like, it's moving so fast. If you feel
Just have fun with
overwhelmed,
it. I think that
yeah,
the overall message of this conversation is be playful and experiment and have fun with AI, right?
yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's maybe that should be our new logo, our new motto. Be playful, experiment, have fun, learn something along the way.
Yeah.
So,
It's not
good.
AI is a tool. That's like these are my definitely my closing thoughts is AI is a tool. It's not going to take your job. It's just going to make your life easier and more creative.
Yeah. Um, fantastic. I like the analogy. Thank you, Talia, so much. It's been a really fun conversation. I hope it was useful to folks listening in. Thank you for the questions online.
And
And
go say hi to your local barista.
go say hi to your local barista. Confess that you work from home if you do, and they'll have some time to chat with you. So,
Thank you so much for having me. It was great.
yeah,
Peter, we
fantastic.
missed
Thank
you
you.
this week.
Yes, Peter's probably on an airplane wishing he could be tuning in right now, but he'll watch it later. So, thank you, everyone, and we'll see you
Bye.
later. Bye bye.
Have a good day.